In comparison to our ancestors, we are but meek imitations. In relation to the titans that came before us, we are measly shadows. It will require everything in our power to reach half the height of our forefathers. These sentiments were often proclaimed by Theoden, king of Rohan, throughout the tale of the Lord of the Rings. He lamented his own lack of greatness when measured against the success and prowess of those from which he descended, and made it his final ambition to become worthy of being mentioned in the same breath. Though I grew up reading and watching Lord of the Rings, my favorite character often changed as I aged. Now, I have decided it is none other than Theoden. I yearn to discover why this was so, and upon further reflection, I believe I have discovered the foremost reason. As a member of Generation Z, I have found that Theoden, king of Rohan, and martyr of the Battle of Pelennor Fields, represents and echoes the sentiments of our generation. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Fiction. While it is true all older generations inevitably impart onto their descendants an explanation of the greatness of the past, something feels different as a member of Gen Z. It feels true. In my deeper subconscious, I can feel the sincerity of these words. I can understand that the world really used to be a better place. All at once, we live in a time and place that is more advanced and successful than ever before, yet is simultaneously more lonely, evil, and downtrodden than any other time in modernity. King Theoden lived in such a time, when he believed all the magic, heroism, and wonder was sapped from the world. His ancestors were men of renown, men who accomplished great deeds and etched their names into the history of Middle-earth forever. Meanwhile, all that was left in the time of Theoden was wickedness and the waning resolve of what few good men remained. At every turn, the weight of such an existence threatened to break him, to drain him of all life. But with aid from others and his own strength, he resisted. He demonstrated time and time again that the very least he could do was fight and die for what good there was left in the world. And as the fair light of battle shone upon his final hour, he made it his mission to achieve a feat worthy of remembrance. Theoden did this not for his own sake, not for some tendril of twisted vanity wrapped around his heart, but to assure that in time he could be counted as worthy to be mentioned in the same breath as those who paved the way for him. As a member of Gen Z, it feels much the same. Our forefathers built countries, fought for their values, and carved the path for the lives of relative ease we now enjoy. Their actions were colossal, but the world has changed. It seems as though the best Gen Z can do is fight a losing battle and stand up for our principles in a way that will inevitably end in our demise. Still, if we remain staunch in the truth and push forward anyway, we may find solace in the end. Theoden's fate proved this in an admirable way, and thus provided Gen Z something to strive for. So, why does King Theoden appeal to Gen Z? Let's explore. Throughout the Lord of the Rings story, Theoden embarks on an unconventional hero's journey. Aragorn is the aspirational, unyielding masculine force. Frodo and Sam are together the embodiment of friendship and simplicity and how such virtues can achieve greatness. Boromir is an empathetic example of temptation and redemption. But Theoden is different than them all. When first encountered in the narrative, Theoden is stewing upon his golden seat at Edoras, clinging to the vile rhetoric of Grima Wormtongue. His son suffers gruesome injuries defending his father's lands, but Theoden cares not even for his own kin in his current state. Instead, he whittles away, broken and decrepit beyond his years. With Wormtongue's assistance, the traitorous Saruman has captured the king's very mind, all the way from his seat at Orthanc. It is not until the arrival of Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, and the reborn Gandalf the White that Theoden becomes himself once more, and even that requires a mystical, subliminal duel for control of the king's being between Gandalf and Saruman. But the former leader of the Istari is cast out of Theoden's head, and Wormtongue is similarly tossed out of Edoras. King Theoden returns. Yet, he is not the man he could and should be. The forces of evil grow and roam steadily across the countryside, and after much discussion, Theoden rallies the good people of Rohan and declares they are to take shelter in the ancient fortress of Helm's Deep. Some see the strategy as folly, but Theoden is the leading voice in the land, and so they obey. Though aided by the arrival of elven forces of Lorien, the men of Rohan are far outnumbered by Saruman's orcs, and cracks in the impenetrable structure begin to show during the Battle of Helm's Deep. The men of Rohan and their fair counterparts fight admirably. They cross blades with snarling, vicious creatures bred in the depths of Isengard, monstrosities of mud and flesh. Their own weapons are finely crafted, if not a touch old, while the blades of the orcs are primitive and jagged. Yet, few men there are repelling the creatures of darkness, of fighting age and experience. Some are elderly, and some still in boyhood. And so the forces of Rohan and Lorien combined stagger, and all seems lost. Theoden sees this, though he only admits as much to his closest advisors. As the Uruk-hai bear down upon the very keep of his supposedly unbreakable fortress, Theoden falls to the brink of nihilism. For the orcs outside his doorstep bring with them the clouds and shadows of death and darkness, and the king sees no way out. If not for the aid of his allies and the inspiration they provide, surely Theoden is resigned to the likely fate that awaits him in the pits of Helm's Deep. However, Gandalf, Aragorn, and the Rohirrim squash Saruman's forces, and Rohan survives to see an even darker period for the Age of Men. Osgiliath has fallen. Minas Tirith is all that remains between the lands of men and the full wrath of Sauron's armies. The steward Denethor is willfully ignorant to his position, but through quick wit and the skills only a hobbit can truly master, Pippin Took lights the great beacon, signaling to Rohan for help in Gondor's darkest hour. When the call finally reaches his hearth at Edoras, Theoden at first sits in contemplation. Aragorn pleads to direct the Rohirrim to Minas Tirith and take up arms with his brothers, but the king of Rohan is not so easily convinced. After all, the men of Gondor were nowhere to be seen when Saruman's filth ran rampant through the Riddermark. But the moment is fleeting, and Theoden swallows his pride. Indeed, Rohan shall ride to the White City, to fight and die beside their brethren of the West. The force sets out, Theoden ever at the head of the party, and when they finally reach their destination, a grim sight awaits them. Legions of orcs and other cursed beasts lay siege to Minas Tirith, vastly outnumbering the dwindling defenders of the City of the Sacred Tree. For a moment, Theoden cowers in his saddle. The battle unfolding before him is enough to break the spirit of any man. It spells certain death. A force so large and so full of hatred is unstoppable, and it is his duty to lead his men straight toward it. For a moment, Theoden drifts farther away from the spirit of his forefathers than ever before. But a decision is made. If death is what awaits him, then death he shall have. And as if his doubt and trepidation were never there, He rallies his troops with a speech to put courage into the heart of any man. But it is not just his words that produce such devotion. Theoden leads the charge, thundering forward on his legendary steed, Snowmane. While many other kings in a similar position would command from the periphery, Theoden of Rohan plunges into danger ahead of any of his soldiers. And though he survives the initial tumult of the battle, he is brought down by an ancient evil, the Witch King of Angmar. His niece Eowyn ends the half-life of the Chief Nazgul with the aid of Merry the Hobbit, but they are too late to save Theoden. He perishes on the Pelennor Fields, having done battle with one of the most fearsome creatures of the age. Just as he had wished all his life, he has taken part in a feat worthy of those accomplished before him. Those are the greatest moments of King Theoden, moments that define his very character throughout the narrative. But let us return to the original query. Why is he so relatable and inspiring to members of Gen Z? From the moment Theoden appears, and even after he is released from Saruman's stranglehold, it is evident he is weary. He is weary of the world, weary of the looming danger, and weary of the fact that he must be a leader in what appears to be the twilight years of the age. Often from his lips springs the idea that he cannot possibly rival anything done by his ancestors to earn his place in the Hall of Great Kings. All the greatness, wonder, and opportunity of the older world are gone, and Theoden is left to lead what admirable life he can in the cesspool that remains. So it is with Gen Z. Even if this may not be objectively true, it feels to members of this generation that the world was somehow greater before. Of course, modern technological and medical advancements have improved quality of life and life expectancy, but the average person is much less fulfilled than ever. Members of Gen Z can feel a subconscious gap, a lingering suspicion that the world was a brighter and more complete place before they even existed. Just like Theoden, they believe that they are unlucky, that they were born at the wrong time and have missed the golden age. Tales are told both of previous generations on Earth and of previous kings on Middle-earth. Ancestors are renowned and praised for their determination, prowess, and historic deeds. But in the broken times of both Theoden and Gen Z, there is rarely a chance to live up to such examples. Like the King of Rohan, the greatest wish of Gen Z is to stand up to this precedent, to carve out a place in history worthy of comparison. And Theoden receives his chance. Gondor calls for the might of Rohan as dusk settles on the Pelennor Fields. And the once spiteful king shrugs aside his previous inhibitions and leads his own troops to aid their kin. But when they reach the precipice of the battle, when they finally behold the might of the enemy that they have marched across the country to face, the men of Rohan quaver. But it is not only the soldiers that falter, but even their king, the one man who is supposed to be staunch in his determination and courage. Theoden cowers in his saddle. He stares death in the face. But in that moment, when he makes the decision to ride out and face it anyway, Theoden marks himself a figure worthy of praise. He shows that even in such a downtrodden world, one in which it seems that the past was always greater than the present, you can still be a great man. He rides out and clashes with the forces of evil until his very death, knowing full well the consequences of his decision, but he does it anyway. By choosing to do what is right, even in spite of the darkness of his surroundings, he etches his name into the annals of history, right alongside the great kings of old that he had so readily admired. Theoden and Gen Z share a general worldview. We live in a place that is diminished with the passage of time. Yet, through his actions and decisions in his final hours, Theoden becomes the embodiment of perseverance and a representation of how Gen Z should try to live, even in such a place, and even with such an attitude. A new age dawned on Middle-earth when Frodo cast the One Ring into the fiery pits of Mount Doom. But King Theoden of Rohan would not live to see it. Instead, he suffered mortal injury in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. This came as no surprise to him, though. Theoden had long since accepted his fate. His whole life, he carried with him the notion that he would never live up to the past, never surpass, or even meet the standards established by his forebears. Similarly, Gen Z as a whole shares this perception. Countless times are they told that the world used to be better, and this is not just the waxing nostalgia of generations past. Even individuals closer in age to Gen Z lament the world that is, and yearn for the world that was. They claim people were friendlier, people were kinder, people were greater. And so, Gen Z is inevitably left with a sense of longing for something they never had. But time cannot be rewound. In Middle-earth, Theoden carried on with what strength and humility he possessed, and ultimately accomplished his goal through his selflessness and sense of justice. His example shines as a path for Gen Z in a nihilistic world. In spite of it all, carry on. Maybe that way, there still can be some good left in the world. So, that's all for this video. Leave a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new here. I'd love to have you. Visit my website, russellawellsauthor.com, for exclusive reviews, fiction, and more, and sign up for my mailing list for free exclusive content. The links for both are in the description below. And, like always, I will see you next time.